My people right here, this is where I want to be. Right here with a room full of nerds. So yeah, I'm Clancy. As you can on my shirt, what we're going to be talking about, everything I stand for, it's all about bees. I love bees. Massive nerd, self-proclaimed. Yeah, so here's a few things that you probably don't know about bees just yet, but you'll be able to tell all your friends and we'll be able to make sure everyone knows and absolutely loves bees. But before I do begin, I'd love to acknowledge that I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung of the Kulin Nation, and there's some interesting ties from First Nations people to bees and insects. Even in the name Wurundjeri, the first part, Wurrun, means the white-barked gum trees, the manna gums, the stringy barks that are along the Birrarung River and the Merry Creek around the area. And the second part, Jerry, that is the witchetty grub that makes little holes in these gum trees, which is one of the habitats for a few types of native bees. So there's an interesting tie in there as well. Another tie, this time of year in Waring season, wombat season, when we get the cooler weather, and there's not much food around this time of year. There's not many things flowering, not much fruit. One of the staple foods for Wurundjeri people this time of year, especially up in the hills, is the soft tree ferns. They would cut off the top metre or so of that and cook up the centre of the soft hearts of the fern. And that's also connected to bees because inside those fern fronds, those little branches, another one of the types of habitat for native bees, those reed bees there. So it's all connected. And I'm sure people have heard of William Barrack. I want to give a cheer to William Barrack. Absolute legend, very staunch man. Barrack actually means caterpillar, so he was named after caterpillars. So it's all intermingled. And if I go back to my nerd origins, I was a young tacker. I used to love, going and catching bugs and lizards, frogs. I'd fill up my pockets. I'd go show mum and freak her out. And that's where it all began. This is a bit like of a niche sort of reference. Anyone remember getting the Sunday paper and on the inside there would be a National Geographic CD or a David Attenborough CD, ages ago? Yeah, we got one up the front. I had the full collection, so I'm absolutely loved all of that. I probably it's like some people can rewatch a movie and they'll know the lines or whatever. That's me with watching the National Geographic films. I'm absolutely love them, and that sort of shaped everything that I've done at uni and my career and that sort of stuff. I'm just love nature and being a part of it. And I did a really cool research project up in northeast Arnhem with the Yolngu people, the First Nations, and we were looking at the bees up there and learning heaps about culture and about native bees and the environment. So this is sort of where my nerd origins come from, and where my love for bees really took off up in northeast Arnhem. And why I care a lot about bees and insects and why I want to raise the awareness and get people to care for them as well is because we're seeing some pretty concerning declines around the world. We actually don't even know that much about Australia and the trends that are happening here because we don't have that much records and that sort of stuff. So we go off a bit of the Northern Hemisphere declines and things that we're seeing, but it is pretty concerning. This is what we have to go off in Australia. I'm not sure who remembers going for a road trip 20, 30 years ago. You'd have to pull over at the servo, and before you yelled about the petrol prices like you do now, it was about having to clean the bugs off your windscreen. That was the main thing we were worried about back then. Whereas, does anyone remember the last time they had to clean bugs off their window? Not really something we have to do it. So there's your science right there. Anecdotal. Less bugs, all right? That's why we need to look after them. That's why I care about them. This is why you should care about them if you don't already. These are some of the things we wouldn't have if we didn't have pollinators, particularly our insects and especially our bees. So things from your chocolate, your morning coffee, if anyone had avocado on toast this morning, if anyone could afford that, or nuts. There's a few luxuries I've missed out on since moving out of home. Fruit. So much of the things that we get to enjoy in our day-to-day lives, we have to thank our pollinators for, which don't get enough credit. And then not to mention the hundreds of thousands of species of flowering plants in the wild which need our pollinators. So this is why we should care about them, but I'm sure that everyone in here already does really care about bees and insects, so thanks for that already. And when I mention pollinators, this is what usually comes to mind. Does anyone want to yell out what this one is? Have a guess. A bee, and you know, correct, what type of bee is this one? Yes, bingo. There's a nerd right there. Let's go. Yes, European honeybee, Apis mellifera. And this gets a lot of credit for pollination, but we've got a ton of different types of pollinators. You've got butterflies, the wind. Anyone here get hay fever? Yeah, absolute killer. Moths, beetles, bees, birds, wasps, even bats, flies. There's even a case of dogs. There's like this Ethiopian wild dog that's a pollinator. So there's a whole bunch of different pollinators out there that the honeybee gets a lot of credit for. And it's the same story when we talk about bees. When I mention bees, people are definitely aware that the European honeybee exists. People have seen the Bee Movie. People... If I had $1 for every time someone said that one, oh, have you seen the Bee Movie, or you love the Bee Movie? Yep. Of course, yes. And this gets a lot of the credit. But this is just one player in the game. There's a whole lot more that we're going to get into. I've got so many people. This is great. This is great. So, around the world, there's over 20,000 different species of bees. Who would have thought that? In Australia, over 2,000. And then that's even a recent prediction since even I put the slides together, or like where I've got this photo from, a recent paper's come out to put that over 25,000 species are the best estimate of bees. So the diversity of bees is just absolutely incredible. So I won't even get to really get into every single species, but I can show a few at least tonight. So we have over 2,000 species in Australia. Does anyone want to guess how many we have names for? So this is how many we think there are. Anyone know how many we actually know are in Australia? It's not too far 2,000, so more than 200. Any higher guesses? Over 1,000. Keep going. About 1,800, getting close. So we have names for about 1,719 that we have in the science, in the literature. So we're still finding more, and we think once we find them all, once we give them more names, it's going to be at least over 2,000. Now, does anyone want to guess how many of all those make honey and have a queen and have a hive? That's not too... We're getting very warm over here. Someone said 10, just more than 10. Very close. If I had a Freddo frog or something, I'd flick it. So only 11, yeah, or country, only 11 make honey and have queens in the whole of Australia. So what do they do if they don't make honey? Like, you'll find out. And in Victoria, in Melbourne, zero native species. The only species that lives around here that makes honey is a European honeybee. Does anyone know where that's from? Bingo. And so, I'd like to introduce this topic, weird behaviours. Not sorry for the puns. So this first one, there's this interesting thing that native bees do called buzz pollination. And so this is like a flower, picture a flower that plays hard to get. It doesn't go like, here's my pollen. It like makes the bees work for it. And they've worked out that if they vibrate the flower, it's almost like on a windy day when the flower's like getting the shit shaken out of it, that they'll get access to the pollen. So no other pollinators aside from bees that can specifically buzz pollinate. So honeybees can't do this. So and put your listening ears on as well, because I think you might even be able to hear it. This is a blue-banded bee. And so that is how it extracts the pollen from one of those flowers, which I find that absolutely incredible. It's almost like, I say to like the kids in schools, it's like revving a car while it's still in neutral. Like you're not going anywhere, but the motor's still like, meh. So that's an interesting behaviour. Another weird behaviour. Anyone here a fan of cordial? Yeah, this is me when I was growing up. Like I'd get dropped off at a friend's house and banned from red cordial. They would say, keep that kid away from the red cordial. But so the idea behind cordial is you want to have it like nice and strong, right? So the bees have the same idea. What happens when bees, because some species like these little native bees are so little that a drink of nectar, like one drop of nectar, can be a pretty large proportion of its own body size. And so they don't want all of the water out of that. The water doesn't have much use to them. But the sugars inside the nectar does. So what they do is they blow bubbles. So if we look at this one in the corner. Oh, got him. And when they're blowing these bubbles, they're evaporating the water out of the nectar drop that they've collected from a flower. And so when they drink in the nectar again, that's like a high concentration of sugar, which is like an important adaptation of theirs. So I'm with the bees on this one. Like stronger flavoured cordial, or more sugar in the nectar. Here's another weird behaviour. This happens quite often. It's the male bees that do this. So these are blue-banded bees from the Amygdala genera, and what you're seeing here is the females. They will dig a hole in the ground, so they build their own nest, dig it in the ground. Because they make the house, they get a spot to stay in at night. Whereas the guys, they don't. So to protest this, they form these little parties or little bachelor clubs, and they sleep together at night, and it's called roosting. So if you go and have a look, it's getting a little bit cold time of year, but when the weather warms back up again, if you look on some of your native grasses and thin vines and twigs, you might see sleeping male bees or roosting bees. We've got heaps more weird behaviours. There's so many interesting things that bees do, and they only gave me 20 minutes, or not even that, I don't think. So we'll see how long we can push that now. So another weird behaviour. This is an island, and people are quick to forget that Australia itself is an island, you know. Thanks for no rabies, because we're an island, we can keep stuff away. Another impact of an island is you have some pretty interesting relationships that build up when you're isolated for millions and millions of years. So what we have in Australia, and one of the reasons why we've got such a diversity of bees in Australia, is we have some really fussy eaters. I'm sure, is there anyone here that only eats like chicken nuggets or like noodles? I know I've still got a friend that's like that. We have bees that are like that. They're sometimes, like this is a megachile, and they actually collect the pollen on the underside of their abdomen because they love pea flowers. And when they land on a pea flower, it pushes the keel down, bang, pollen's right there. They just go nuts. And they've designed their whole adaptation and evolution through this relationship with pea flowers. You have these tiny little bees, Euryglossinae, which are small enough to just go straight into the inside of a eucalyptus flower, like a myrtaceae, and they will just have a little party in there because they've just got as much nectar as they like for their little bodies. So they've got an awesome adaptation as well. This is one of my favourites as well. This one is known as a G-bung bee. Has anyone got any Persunia plants at home? No, get some Persunias in your grounds, please. But these bees here, they've developed a like smooth face. So this group of bees are typically very hairy clypeus, or their face, lots of scopa and hair. They have got like a smooth forehead, so that front part of the flower, they just like slide up it and use their smooth face to force their way into the back of the flower, whereas a lot of other bee species don't get access to that one. They do. So there's some interesting fussy eater bees. Other weird behaviours. So like I was saying before, we have lots of bee species. Only 11 are in this very last one, the social bees. They're the ones that have a queen and a hive and make honey. There's only 11 of those in Australia. But we also have solo baddies, where the females make the nest all by themselves, like the blue banded bees. This is actually quite a lot of our bee species. We have communal bees. This is like, I don't know, if maybe they're more like the Fitzroy type, the Brunswick. They still like make their own nests, or they like might have their own room, but they've got like, you know, share houses, or they like have neighbours. So they like live in like little communities. Then you have semi-social bees. And this one actually reminds me about a bit of my family household, because the parents make the nest. These ones are carpenter bees in the photo. And the parents sometimes will grow old enough and use the same nest that they actually raise their young to be adults and get kicked out by their own kids. Not me, my sister. I'll make my own. Yeah, so they've got semi-social examples where, you know, they might have older daughters that help with the parenting of the next generation, or just flat out kick them out. So they've got semi-social bees, and then the social that you would have learned a lot about through the honeybee, the queen, the hive, all that shabazz. But the way we've set those up in Australia is a little bit different. So I can maybe jump into that a bit later, but we have a whole range of just the ways that bees in Australia will nest and have their own family dynamics set up. We also have freaky bees. So this is pretty interesting. I'm not sure if anyone in here has tried this one. The male megachile bees are pretty distinguishable because they have really hairy forearms. And so what their tactic is they'll like sneak up on the female and blindfold her with their hairy forearms, and that'll like chill her out, and she won't fly off if he's like calmed her down enough, and then they'll mate. So there's some guys with some pretty freaky tactics for breeding. Then this is my all-time favourite, right? The sneaky bees. This is the one on my shirt. These are cuckoo bees. And these are every single little thing about their evolution and their biology is specifically adapted just to be the biggest op of the blue-banded bee, or like the number one hater. So they look similar colours, so they sort of blend in a bit. They're active at the same time of year. They like similar flowers. They will sneak into the nest of a blue-banded bee when they're not paying attention. And even if they do get caught, they've got these really narrow waists that are, or like their abdomen's very pointed, so that even if they do get caught, when a blue-banded bee tries to grab them on the arse and pull them out, it's hard to grab onto them because they're so skinny. And it goes on. Then even when they lay their eggs, the eggs are laid, even if they're laid delayed or same time, their eggs will hatch first before the blue-banded bee every single time. And even if the eggs aren't as developed as a blue-banded bee larvae, they have overdeveloped mandibles or jaws for chomping on the baby blue-banded bee. So every single thing about their adaptation and their evolution is just to be the ultimate parasite of the blue-banded bee, and I just find it so interesting. Then we also have murdering bees. So this is one of my favourite David Attenborough clips. If anyone searches up the Dawson's borrowing bee in your spare time, what happens here is these are very seasonal. So the males will appear and they'll be like so jacked up and like ready. They've been in a hole in the ground all year, and then they're waiting around for females. And then the poor ladies, which decide that they're the bravest to emerge first, are quite often absolutely eloped in these just swarms of very, very horny male bees. And sometimes that will even lead to these like brawls between males where females can get caught up in the conflict, and it can even sometimes result in death or decapitation from just super, super excited male Dawson's borrowing bees. So there's some really, really weird behaviours. And the last one I've got for you is this is a typical Australian example because this one is known as the marsupial bee. And that is because it has a pouch. And in that pouch is mites. But don't jump to your conclusions yet, because these mites are freaking awesome, right? Because you might have heard about the varroa mite, horrible for the European honeybee and beekeepers. This mite is an absolute legend. This one gets transferred from the male to the female. When the female makes her nest, she'll scrape off a few of the mites, and then she'll seal it up. Why that's interesting is because these mites, they're just dormant, they're inactive, they're not doing anything, but there's something that will trigger them and set them off into being active. And why that's interesting is because when the females are making the nest, they're putting like pollen and nectar, which is like super, super rich nutrients, and it's like got precipitation and moisture. So when they put that inside a nest and they seal it off, it's like having a wet sock or a wet towel and throwing it in somewhere. So eventually that might get mold or fungi. So when the level of moisture levels and humidity raises inside the nest where these mites are sitting around waiting, they become activated, because that's a similar time as to when there would be a rise in the levels of the fungi or mold inside the nest. And then these mites will control the levels of the fungi and mold so that the babies will hatch normally, eat the pollen and nectar, grow up, and then the mites will reproduce and hitch a ride on the way out. So it's like this super special relationship where the mites control the fungi and mold, and they get a free ride from the female and the male of these marsupial bees. So that's just this awesome relationship where one wouldn't be able to survive without the other, and just a bit of street cred for the mites, which are... What else we got? All right, Mr. Einstein's up on the screen now. Got a few bee facts / myths. So only female bees have stingers and can sting. So back to the bee movie. Who's seen the scene where the lawyer, like the big fat one that comes and steps out of the car and steps on a bug, and then they're in the court and he gets angry and stings the lawyer man or the villain? Well, that was a male bee, so that's all wrong. Next one. Anyone Greek or Latin speakers in here? Anthophyla or anthophilia. So this is the proper name for bees. Second part, phyla or philia, meaning lover or have an affinity for. First part, antho, means flowers. So bees, by their name and by their game, are flower lovers. Anthophyla. Only European honeybees die when they sting. That's another thing, because they have barb stingers. Native bees don't have the barbs, so they don't die from stinging, but they won't ever sting you. 70% of the native species nest in the ground. Like around Australia, we've got plenty of ground all over the place, so plenty of habitat for them to nest in. There's just a number of how much of the crops benefit from insects, so we have heaps. And then a bit of a long-winded one. When European colonists came to Australia, when I go back to about how we have fussy eater bees here that love, native plants, they've adapted to these relationships with the species in Australia because we're an island. So when European people rocked up, they brought their European fruit trees and flowers and crops and things, and then I was just going to shit, like nothing was working. They were like, what's happening to my fruit, my flowers? They're not getting pollinated. And that's because we've got so many fussy eater bees over here that couldn't care less about these alien looking European fruit. So then they worked out that they had to bring European honeybees over in 1822 to pollinate the European crops and European food for the European people. So that's the reason we have European bees in Australia that are so well established. And now I've just got like a few of the iconic native bees in Australia, like a few of the different groups. So I'm just going to sort of like power through these ones. Maybe I'll see come up with a favourite or something. This is usually the fan favourite. It's like a gateway drug to bees and insects. The blue banded bees, definitely people have heard about them. People are always sending me photos and text messages. Oh, I've just seen a blue banded bee. I go, awesome, love it. People just love it. And they were even voted Insect of the Year in 2024 for those that celebrate. So, and the Amygdala also includes teddy bear bees, really cute and fluffy ones, as well as the golden Amygdalas. We've also got the cuckoo bees, Thyreus. So there's a few of these ones. They're known as kleptoparasites, because they're pollen stealers and raid the nests. We've got reed bees. So these are the ones that can nest inside the fern fronds. And yeah, there's a few groups of these ones depending on what part of Australia you are. We've got Exonura and Amphilaus in the Dandenongs. Bronzapis is more of a northern one. So there's reed bees. We've got Megachile. These have got some pretty cool ones. You've got your leaf cutter bees that they cut little chunks out of your rose leaves, your bougainvillea petals, your Hardenbergias. If you ever see a perfect little semicircle disc cut out of your leaves, that's the culprit right there. And that includes your Mr. Freaky Man with these blindfold arms. We've got resin bees. These are pretty cool. They ever seen a tree that looks like it's bleeding? The tree sap. These collect the tree sap and will mix it with like sand or chewed up bit of leaf to make it into like a glue to seal the nest that they create in, say, for example, the hole from a witchetty grub in a gum tree. So there's some interesting ones there. Coletids, so when things have coletes in their name, that typically comes from the Latin term collectus or collective, because they will live in like little groups. These are usually pretty hairy as well. We've got Hyloides. These are wasp mimic bees. These are from the group Hylenae, and they're interesting because instead of carrying their pollen on their scopa or their hair, which is what we typically associate with bees, these actually have an extra stomach where they eat and store the pollen inside. And for that reason, they don't really need any of the hair on their bodies. So they lost all their hair. And so now a lot of these look like wasps. And this one in particular is a wasp mimic bee because it looks a lot like a wasp and it pretends to be a wasp so it gets left alone, because you would know to leave wasps alone in the backyard, and so do animals sometimes. Here's the native bees that make the honey, so the 11 species. And what's also cool about these is these are actually stingless. So the only bees in Australia that do have something to protect the honey in a queen can't sting you. But they're still pretty persistent. And so what these will do for their defense of their hives, they will fly into your eyeballs, into your mouth, up your nostrils, into your ears. And one thing that they'll do actually is they will cut off your eyelashes. Yep, that's one of the things they've worked out that must shit the researchers or whatever. But when I was working on the bees in Arnhem Land, these stingless bees, you would be like, oh sweet, can't get stung by them, I'm gonna be sweet. But no, they would land on your eyeballs and try and cut your eyelashes off. Credit to them. We got carpenter bees, Xylocopa. These are the ones where the older daughter kicks mum out of the house, which I'm going to see play out in the next few years, I'd imagine. And they're pretty interesting because they, like a carpenter, they'll make their house out of wood, like in the flower spike of a grass tree or in some soft wood. They're pretty cool. We've also got Hylaeus, that's in that group Hylenae that look like wasps. This one is known as a masked bee, because if you think about some of the superheroes, action figures that wear like a superhero mask, that's one of the culprits right there. It looks like they've got these markings on their faces. Also known as cellophane bees, because they make their own plastic-like substance which they use to seal their nests that they make. We've got so many. I could go on forever, so I'm going to cut it off soon. So stay with me. Euroglossa. These are like super diverse group of bees here in Australia because they love Myrtaceae, which is your eucalyptus, your corymbia, your paperbark, your scissor gum, all of our Myrtaceae, and they're specialists of them. So there's such a diversity in those. So there's a diversity in these. And I think this is my last iconic bee species. This is the Tenocalides of the Stenotritid family. So these only are found in Australia. So there's like 21 species of these, only found here, nowhere else. So this is like our own born and bred family of bees, which is super awesome. Now why these are cool is one of these females can dig 3 meters deep into the ground. And in a few months, so that's not even taller than I can reach. That's taller than I can jump. Like if I actually had a run up and try to get that. And I didn't, like probably people in there sitting like, oh, that's bullshit. And I thought the same thing. But the guy who told me that was the poor bastard that decided, it was like, oh, this is one of those bees we don't know a whole lot about. And I found like where they're living around. Let's look into their nest biology. And that was his famous last words, because after like 3 days of digging to get to the bottom of one of these nests, he worked out how deep they dig. And I don't think there's been a whole lot looked into it ever since, because stuff that. All right, this one. I feel like we might be able to, people that might have already seen this in the news, maybe don't spoil it, because this went pretty viral around the world. Does anyone want to have a guess at what we might have called this bee? Sorry? Zombie bee?
Batman?
Batman, I reckon, is probably closer. It's definitely like one of those sort of underworld sort of figures. This is the clue I'm going to give you. It's related to these things here, what they might look like. The devil bee, bingo, Freddo Frog. So these ones, their scientific name, and you won't need to know Latin or Greek for this one, their scientific name, Megachile lucifer. And their recent discovery just in the last few months. So that's pretty sick. And I've talked about, why we should care about native bees. I've talked about how awesome they are. So give me some if you reckon native bees are cool now. Yeah. All right, I've done my job. Fantastic. That's why I came here. That's why I've done my job. And so there's a few things we can do to help our native bees. So one thing you can do is we can reduce our bug spray, our pesticide use, particularly one of the things that happens, when it happens in springtime, people see aphids on their roses and they think, shit, I've got to spray those aphids. But then what they don't realise is that once the aphids appear, there's ladybugs and there's parasitic wasps that go bingo. That's an absolute feast. And they go to eat all these aphids, but then those aphids get sprayed. So then there's no aphids. And then those ladybugs and predatory wasps are like, oh, there's no food here. They all die off or they move away. And then the aphids, probably a few weeks later, just come back anyway. And then there's no predators because they've moved away. So reducing our pesticides and integrating the pest management or creating more balanced ecosystems can go a long way. We can plant indigenous plants, flowers, trees, shrubs, and grasses. Don't forget your grasses. Your native butterflies, caterpillars need the native grasses. And I love indigenous and locally native plants as well, because remember, what are our native bees when it comes to eating? Fussy eaters. So they need native, they're very fussy, they want native indigenous flowers. And we can also create habitat bee hotels. Like what these are doing as well is they're trying to best replicate the natural places in where bees nest in, like the ground, in the reeds, in the fern fronds, in the holes, in the wood. And the last thing that you can do for native bees is follow their bees and blossoms. Follow me, the bee man. Yeah, otherwise, thank you.
All right. I'm sure we've all learnt a lot about bees tonight. It feels like bees have had kind of a rebrand in the last 10 years.
Oh, hell yeah.
I feel like they went from like a thing you were scared as a kid to like, I should like this thing.
Yep.
I like it. All right. Do we have any questions in the audience? We might have some lights. Yeah.
Do you still have your eyelashes?
Do you still have your eyelashes?
Well, do they grow back? I've definitely got a few missing from my time up in Arnhem Land. I'm not really sure if they grow back. I feel like they do.
In about 4 weeks they do. So.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so
I'm standing right next
back.
to him. He does have eyelashes.
Right.
One right up the back there.
You said there are like over 20,000 species of bees. So how different is a species to each other?
Oh, good question. How different are the species?
Great question, and I pity the taxonomists that have to work this stuff out. Because reading... have we got any entomologists in here? No. Okay, well, I can say what I want then. No, but I will say the truth. When you have a species key, you could have two species of bees that look the exact same, put them under a microscope, still look the exact same. You're looking through the species key to tell the different species apart, and it can come down to how curved or straight one of the veins in their wings is. It can come down to the length of the spurs on their kneecaps, like bees do have knees, or bees' knees. The amount of hair, or like how sparse or spaced apart the hair is on their face, or their clypeus. What else was there? The width of some of the segments on their turgor, on their abdomens. Like the most peculiar stuff will separate a species, and it would have, I don't know how they come up with it, but obviously there's like the breeding and DNA stuff now, thank God, but
so if there's like a poor bee that's accidentally gone bald, it might be classified as something else.
And that can be one of the things that makes it hard as well. When you do the sampling and put them in ethanol, sometimes that can damage the hairs and things. So it is an absolute nightmare to tell bees apart. And yeah, I do feel bad for taxonomists at the time.
Leave it to the experts.
Worth their money, whatever they're getting paid, up it.
I've got a question down here.
Yeah, so if we go back a bit, how do you differentiate between bee and wasps and flies?
Ooh.
What makes a bee?
That's a good question. So if we're out in our backyards, how can we differentiate between a bee and a wasp?
Yep. This is a great question, because I actually must have skipped this in my slides. I don't remember saying it. Bees are actually vegetarian wasps. Yes, so bees are actually within the wasp group. So if you do taxonomy, you've got the Hymenoptera, which it goes like this way, and there's ants, it goes this way, and there's sawflies, and it goes this way, and there's wasps. And then some wasps go this way, some wasps are stinging, some wasps more like ants, and then there's bees. So they're actually a group within wasps, and the main difference being that when they collect food for their young, they're not going and paralysing spiders and caterpillars, they're going and collecting pollen and nectar from the flowers. So a lot of it is actually behaviours. It's similar with like butterflies and moths. They're actually pretty similar things, but more of a behaviour thing. But some of the things to try and pin them apart, that can be, and it's also hard when you've got like 20,000 species of wasp, 2,000 species of bee to make generalisations. But sometimes wasps will have more of a narrow waist. Wasps are capable of folding their wings like long ways, so they can do that as well. And just the way they fly around, sometimes wasps can be a bit more like detective mode, whereas bees can just be like, oh, where are the flowers at, you know? Because the wasps are born killers. And then the eyes of, if you get close enough, so I don't recommend this, but if you get close enough to a wasp, they can have like figure 8 eyes instead of like semicircles. So they're more like, they're called emarginated. And then flies quite often don't have much hair. Their structural colour is more like iridescent. Quite often they'll have like big goggle eyes. But the main thing about flies is they have short antennas.
They got left out of the rebrand. We might just have one more question because of time. Who's the most enthusiastic? Oh, God.
I'll come stand right here, whoever has questions.
There will be break time, so we'll be able to hear, I think, this person right up the back here. Yeah.
What species of plants do we plant for our...
Ooh, is there any specific species of plant we need to plant in our backyard to attract these bees?
I would say my number one tip, go to your local native nursery, which isn't Bunnings. Go to a proper Indigenous, locally native nursery and just fill up your trolley. Say, what do I need? Give me all different flowers that are local to my area. That's probably my number one tip. But just to have diversity. When we've had studies done, particularly in urban environments, they've looked at parks and gardens, they've looked at introduced versus exotic versus native and Indigenous. Time and time again, the two things that drive biodiversity is Indigenous plants over exotics, and then the diversity. Though patch size isn't as important, you can have a small little patch out the front of your house, small little backyard. That's not as important. Having a diversity and having locally native plants. And the next best thing is connectivity. So if you have a few neighbours along your street that have your own patches, and you can connect streets or connect parks and reserves from each other, they're the best things to do.
Yeah, great. All right, if we can give Clancy the biggest, well done.